Hello and welcome to Double Back for Ammo. My name is Dan Berlew, and for 13 years I was lucky to write official strategy guides for video games between the years 1999 to 2012. I was also lucky to write the guides for Zone of the Enders, Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3, all when they were released back on the PlayStation 2 in the early 2000s. Since playing the first Metal Gear Solid, I've been a huge fan of Hideo Kojima, the creator of that game series, as well as Death Stranding. Death Stranding 2 is coming out later this week, and whenever Mr. Kojima releases a game, I always like to think back fondly on the years where I was writing books about his games. After the first Metal Gear Solid, I was as eager as anyone to see his next game. Luckily, thanks to my publisher, I was able to attend E3 2000. The game press had been hinting that MGS2 might be shown at the Konami booth there at E3, so I immediately visited the booth and found out what time the trailer would show. I waited for over half an hour to see the world premiere of the Metal Gear Solid 2 trailer, and here's a clip of that event.
At E3, the biggest video game trade show of the year, one game dominated conversation. Every hour, huge crowds gathered.
There in the bottom right corner of the screen is a 29-year-old Dan Berlew standing shoulder to shoulder with dozens of other E3 attendees, getting ready to watch the premiere of the MGS2 trailer. The trailer was the highlight of E3 that year, and it was all that anyone was talking about. Because of the trailer, the rights to publish the official guide kicked off a bidding war for the license. I understand the advance on the game guide was over $1 million, which was the highest and might have remained the highest amount ever paid for the rights to an official strategy guide. I begged and annoyed my publishers until they finally agreed to assign me to write the official guide. This means I was one of the first people to play the final game. This also means that I was one of the first people outside of Konami to learn that Solid Snake, the series hero, would not be the protagonist of the game. That shortly into the game, he would be replaced by a new character named Raiden. This was shocking. This was a tremendous gamble on the part of Kojima and Konami. This would have a tremendous effect on the fans. This completely subverted all expectations. I learned of this change during my first playthrough of the game. When the tanker section ended kind of abruptly, I thought it was odd. According to what was shown in the game trailers, I thought the tanker would be the entire game, and while it was sinking, we'd have to fight the new type of Metal Gear. But then the tanker section ended, without the expected boss fight. We moved on to the big shell section, and Raiden was introduced. At first, I thought it was a joke. The way they introduced Raiden follows the opening of the first Metal Gear Solid, with the character swimming into the enemy base. With Colonel Roy Campbell on the codec radio guiding him in, I was convinced this was just Snake starting a new mission. But I could tell something was off about the voice and the suit he was wearing. Then he took off his breathing mask. I thought perhaps Kojima was mocking the first game, and this was just a funny and interesting way to introduce a new character with a new perspective. As the game progressed, I kept expecting Snake to take over and resume being the main character. But several hours into the game, I realized that wasn't going to happen. I knew that this could have a polarizing effect on the fan base, especially because of what was shown, i.e. promised, in the game trailers. I went back to the internet and watched all the trailers for the game. I think we had 2 or 3 of them at the time, and I saw specific instances where Snake had been substituted in the place of Raiden, such as during the Fortune boss fight or the first scene with the new cyborg ninja. The trailers deliberately hid the fact that Raiden was the main character of the game. Hideo Kojima and Konami were fooling people into thinking that Solid Snake would be the playable protagonist during scenes where he would not be. I became worried that there would be a backlash to this kind of marketing. I had to stay in Indianapolis under double NDA while playing the game. After I finished writing the strategy guide and flew back home, I checked my email and someone had sent me a piece of leaked character art. This piece, which I recognized immediately, was depicting Raiden. The person was asking if I could confirm who the character was and their role in the story. Like I said, I was under double NDA and I could not risk answering that question without facing severe legal ramifications. So I'm sorry that I didn't reply. Then the game came out, and A lot of frustration was voiced on the internet. At the time, we didn't have social media. We had separate gaming fan sites like IGN or GameSpot or Metal Gear fan shrine websites. And usually each one of these had a forum, and gamers took to those forums and they were posting and they were mad, very, very angry. People began to use the term bait and switch. My main question was why? Why did Hideo Kojima use the most highly anticipated sequel in gaming history to introduce a new and somewhat annoying character? Not the character we all fell in love with, Solid Snake, but this new character, Raiden. Why him? I began to form a theory that there was something going on in the background of Metal Gear Solid 2. And I will share that theory with you today, and I think that many of you will find that it hits close to the mark. When you're writing a strategy guide, the story of a game is the last thing you focus on. You're worried about maps, enemies, and item placement, and writing strategies that other gamers can understand and utilize. So after MGS2 released, I replayed it and I listened to the dialogue more closely, and I came up with a theory of what Kojima is using Raiden to say to players during MGS2. The game starts with Snake infiltrating the US Navy tanker Discovery to try to take photographic evidence of a new prototype Metal Gear being transported on the ship. Following the events of Metal Gear Solid 1, now referred to as the Shadow Moses incident, Snake and his pal Otacon are now both part of an anti-Metal Gear group that is officially recognized by the UN. Let's stop for a minute and highlight that. Snake is anti-Metal Gear. He doesn't want anyone making any more Metal Gears. And Snake is often seen as the avatar, surrogate, or raisonneur for Hideo Kojima himself. Kojima's protagonists often spout his own political and social views right into his games. So, in a sense, here is Hideo Kojima saying, I don't want any more Metal Gears to be made. And by extension, I don't want to make any more Metal Gear games. This logically follows answers that Kojima himself gave to interviewers at the time about why he made the switch from Snake to Raiden. He said that he didn't want to make more Metal Gear games, he wanted to hand them off to the team at Konami. But there were problems, so he had to take over again. But I personally think so much more than that is going on in MGS2. Following the tanker, we start the Big Shell scenario, and this is when Raiden is introduced. Between the narration of Roy Campbell and his character swimming into the operation zone, it's a perfect mirror of the opening events of MGS1. There is an intentional deception going on here. We're meant to think that the events of MGS1 are repeating themselves. We're meant to think that this character is Snake. He even tries claiming the codename Snake until Campbell forbids it, so he must go by the codename Raiden. As we hear Raiden talk to his radio contacts and other characters, we come to understand that he is completely unlike Solid Snake in many ways. Early on, he admits he is inexperienced in real stealth operations. When he meets the real Solid Snake inside Big Shell, he reveals that all his training was in VR. While footage of VR missions is shown from the game's Metal Gear Solid and Metal Gear Solid VR missions. Earlier, Raiden also discusses training in a simulation of the Shadow Moses incident. What Kojima is telling us is that Raiden is a gamer, and that his training for this was to play the first game, Metal Gear Solid 1. This isn't the first time we've seen Kojima tear down the boundaries of the virtual experience and remind us that we are playing a game. In Metal Gear Solid 1, Snake is directed to contact another character named Meryl Servelberg via codec. When he asks what her codec frequency is, he's told to look at the back of the CD case. Lo and behold, if the player flipped over their Metal Gear Solid jewel case, they'd see a screenshot of Snake talking to Meryl via codec and her tuning frequency. So the game confirms that Raiden is a gamer, but Raiden also has some other personality traits that are a little less desirable. Raiden is, well, annoying.
There's a lot of pressure on my torso.
And immature.
The elevator, a node.
Did you say nerd?
Not nerd, node.
Oh.
Unlike seasoned hero Solid Snake, he reacts emotionally to almost every situation he encounters in the game, like a teenager lost at Disney World and lashing out at the adults as if though it's all their fault.
Looks like your new hosts have a Harrier too.
A Harrier? What is this?
Calm down.
Raiden freaks out where an experienced soldier wouldn't.
Not exactly gourmet, though, is it?
Stop complaining, Raiden.
Hang in there, Jack. When the mission is over, I'll make you my specialty.
Yeah, right. No, nothing. Can't wait.
And he's a pretty shitty boyfriend as well.
Did I tell you you could move?
It's all right. He's not one of the bad guys. Don't go pointing that thing everywhere, kid.
I'll make dinner. Oh, what's wrong?
Well, that sounds good, but how about we eat out at that one restaurant instead? You know, the place that we went to recently with the amazing lobster. I really like that place.
Well, yeah, I guess that's okay too. Huh?
Nothing. I just love lobster. Yeah, can't wait. Woohoo!
Even if Rose really is a terrible cook, there are more constructive ways to handle the situations besides avoiding it and trying to trick her. But even worse are the revelations about Raiden that come later in the game, such as his troubled past as a child soldier, aka a child gamer. And there's the emotional distance that he seems to put between himself and Rose or anyone else who cares about him, due to his childhood trauma and resulting PTSD. With a background like this, why would he be so determined to prove himself as a soldier? Turns out, spoiler warning, that the colonel he's been taking orders from is not the same Colonel Roy Campbell from Metal Gear Solid 1, but an AI transmitting from within Arsenal Gear, the new Metal Gear housed under the big shell. His interactions with this colonel are suspect from the start, especially when the colonel is unable to identify Solid Snake from Raiden's encounters with him, and him repeatedly telling Raiden not to work with him. Raiden's actions and motivations are not his own. Everything he's done has been at the will of an AI using Raiden as a test subject to see if it is able to control human beings and shape their interactions through factual and historical manipulation. So not only is Raiden whiny, bratty, a shitty boyfriend, overly emotional, and easily manipulated, he's also a patsy for a computer AI. If Raiden is meant to represent gamers in the real world, then he's a poor representation of us. Which brings me back to my earlier question. Why him? If this is the way Kojima sees Raiden as a gamer, then what is he trying to say about all gamers through this portrayal? I don't think Kojima is telling us that he himself feels this way about gamers. We have far too many interviews wherein he talks about his joy in crafting new and unique experiences for gaming audiences. Gamers and their reactions to his work are this man's lifeblood. As a gamer and a fan, I just can't agree that he feels this way about those of us who play his games. Through the in-game revelations about the Patriots AI and the S3 plan, or Solid Snake simulation, I think that Kojima is indicating to gamers some of the backstory behind the scenes of the development of Metal Gear Solid 2. In early interviews about Raiden, Kojima stated that the character was created to appeal more to female gamers. And there's nothing wrong with appealing to female gamers or a broader market, but whose idea was that? Kojima or someone else? Who would be looking at the demographics and numbers on Metal Gear Solid 1 and Kojima's previous games and telling him that his protagonist needs to have broader market appeal? This sounds like the kind of thing that marketers or corporate executives would be telling Kojima to incorporate into his next game for better sales. So I'm going to go out on a limb and tell you about the theory that I've had about Raiden since first playing the game almost 24 years ago. I believe, and have always believed, that Raiden is not a Hideo Kojima creation. At least not in the initial conception. I believe that Raiden is a corporate-injected character designed to hit a certain demographic, mandated into existence by the numbers in a spreadsheet on someone's computer, collected from a variety of unknown and unverified data points scattered across the internet. I believe that Raiden is not a gamer as Kojima sees us, but as corporate greed sees us, as a demographic to be hit in the marketing, appealing simultaneously to both males and females alike, of all ages, including children. Corporations see gamers as emotionally distant from their friends and loved ones, finding their enjoyment only in the games. Gamers are shitty boyfriends, and maybe that's for the best in corporate thinking. Gamers just want to rehash the exact same Shadow Moses scenario for another $70 or $80 a year. Gamers are easily manipulated, believe false facts and figures, and do what they are told no matter how little it makes sense. At least, corporations hope that's what gamers are like, because that way it makes it easier to predict the next game's sales. Kojima warned us about a lot of things in Metal Gear Solid 2, such as the current state of social media and the algorithms and AIs that are starting to control our media and entertainment, as well as the rise of fact distortion. But what he was mainly warning us about is how corporations perceive gamers, and how by fitting into the criteria that Raiden allowed an AI algorithm to force him into, we as gamers are also playing right into corporations' false narratives about us. Think about companies that put out the same first-person shooter Modern Warfare game every year, or the same assassin game over and over but set in a different historical period. Kojima is warning us that buying the same game and expecting the same experience over and over is detrimental to the gaming industry. I believe his inspiration for this was the pressure he felt to make another Metal Gear Solid game when he didn't want to. Remember, he wanted to hand the series off to another team, but Konami didn't let him. Based on Death Stranding, Kojima clearly doesn't mind making his games more accessible to women and other demographics, but he certainly doesn't want to change a character he's already created. So instead of changing Snake to appeal to broader demographics, he created Raiden and swapped him in. Raiden, of course, got a better storyline and send-off in Metal Gear Solid 4, but thinking about all the things I've told you about Raiden as a gamer and fitting into a corporate demographic, listen again to the first part of Snake's final speech to Raiden at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2, and think about everything in terms of the gaming industry, and knowing who you are as a gamer and what variety of virtual experiences you want to have.
Who am I really?
No one quite knows who or what they are. The memories you have and the role you were assigned are burdens you had to carry. It doesn't matter if they were real or not. That's never the point. There's no such thing in the world as absolute reality. Most of what they call real is actually fiction. What you think you see is only as real as your brain tells you it is.
Then, what am I supposed to believe in? What am I going to leave behind when I'm through?
We can tell other people about having faith. What we had faith in. What we found important enough to fight for. It's not whether you were right or wrong, but how much faith you were willing to have. That decides the future. The Patriots are a kind of ongoing fiction too, come to think of it. Listen, don't obsess over words so much. Find the meaning behind the words, then decide. You can find your own name, and your own future.
Decide for myself?
And whatever you choose will be you.
I don't know if I can.
I know you didn't have much in terms of choices this time. But everything you felt, thought about during this mission is yours. And what you decide to do with them is your choice.
You mean start over?
Yeah, a clean slate, a new name, new memories. Choose your own legacy. It's for you to decide. It's up to you.
I sincerely hope you enjoy Death Stranding 2 when it comes out this week. I know I will, and I also hope that it has more subtext and predictions from Mr. Kojima. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great day.